Thank you very much, Elle, and thank you to TA for hosting us today so graciously. My name is Devin Grayson-Wallace, and I am a research analyst with the Violence Against Women Act Measuring Effectiveness Initiative, or VAWA MEI. I'm part of a team of about 16 people, and together we are the technical assistance provider charged with helping you and all other grantees to report your grant-funded activities under the Violence Against Women Act federal grant that you receive. Our team works out of the Muskie School of Public Service at the University of Southern Maine in Portland, Maine, normally, although as you can see from this picture of our team taken recently, we've all been working remotely for most of the last year and a half. Here at VAWA MEI, our mission is twofold. We collect, align, and analyze data from thousands of VAWA grantees nationwide. We also support grantees in completing the semi-annual progress reporting forms that all VAWA grantees must complete on a regular basis. And we support grantees with these semi-annual progress reporting forms via webinars like this, as well as direct technical assistance over the phone or via email. We say this to help explain that we, VAWA MEI, are an OVW grantee ourselves. We have a technical assistance grant and our TA provider. We are funded to be the experts on progress reporting so that you do not have to be, and you can call us for assistance whenever you need some help interpreting these complicated and not always very intuitive progress reporting forms. We are not just grants or OVW. Therefore, it is not our role to monitor your grant, but instead try to help make sense of your data, as well as make sure you are reporting as accurately as possible and support you in demonstrating all of the great work that grantees like you do with VAWA funds. So today we are going to go over just a couple things. Since this is intended to be an introduction to progress reporting, we are going to explain the semi-annual reporting cycle and why your data matters. We are going to review data reporting guidance related to the pandemic, review available resources and where you can ask for help and who can help you with which types of questions. We're also going to have an opportunity to answer your questions. We invite you to ask your questions freely at any time that you have them or that they occur to you using the question and answer portal at the bottom of your webinar screen. We might not answer your question immediately. We might wait until we get to the exact slide that might be most relevant to it, or we might answer it immediately. And we may also hold a question until the end if they require a more lengthy or specific explanation, or if we think they might take us down a different path. So whether we answer them as soon as you enter them into the Q&A or not, know that we are watching the Q&A and we will answer your question during this webinar. Or if we can't answer it, we will refer you to who can if it is beyond our expertise. One other thing I want to say about that is that if you have questions specific to just grants, as in the system where you must upload your progress reporting form, that is something that we are not experts on. We ourselves can only use just grants as a grantee submitting data, but we do have some resources and links pointing you to the Just Grant helpline and support if that's the nature of your question. Just putting that out there because we know that there are many questions alive these days about exactly how that system works because it is new to all of us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah, and I, of course, work with Devin at VAWA MEI. And we're going to dive right into the reporting process and how your data gets submitted and where it goes after you submit it into JustGrants. As you may or may not be aware, as a federal grantee, you are mandated to submit a progress report every 6 months, where you provide information on what your grant fund supported during that reporting period. And so the moment you become a grantee, you are mandated to complete a progress report 2 times a year. The 2 different reporting periods are January to June and then July to December. The January to June progress report is due 30 days after the close of the reporting period. So this January to June 2021 report is due July 30th, not July 31st. It is an important thing to remember. So you as an OVW grantee will be submitting your semi-annual progress report into the JustGrants system. You will download the progress report for your program from our website or from a link that you got from your program specialist. So you'll download the form from our website. Make sure that you download the form onto your computer, and so that you are opening the form in Adobe Acrobat Reader or some version of Adobe. Oftentimes we find that web-based viewers, PDF viewers, will automatically open the form, and that will cause some issues with entering data into the form, saving the data that you did enter, issues like that, which can turn out to be rather frustrating if you spent a lot of time entering data and then you cannot save it. So we like to really focus on making sure you download the form from our website directly onto your computer and open it up in Adobe. Once you have it opened in Adobe, you fill it out, you'll validate it by pressing the validation button at the end of the report, and then you'll upload it into the JustGrants system. And like Devin said, we have limited knowledge on the system, but we do have some resources that we can provide to you and will provide to you at the end of our slide deck about JustGrants. Once you submit your data into JustGrants, that will then go on to your OVW program specialist. Your program specialist will review your data. They will potentially reach out to you with questions that they might have about anything you submitted. It's possible they'll ask that you change something on your form or provide more clarity. If that happens, you'll work with your program specialist to update the report, send it to your program specialist, and they'll help you get the report back into JustGrants. Once that whole process is done with your program specialist reviewing the data, they then send the data on to us at VAWA MEI. And that's when we start reviewing the data. We look for missing data, any inconsistencies, really high values. We review what you reported to make sure everything makes sense. It's possible while we're doing that review that we'll reach out to you with questions. If we reach out to you with questions, you simply just need to answer our questions. If there are any data changes that need to happen to your report at this time, we'll go ahead and make the changes on our end, and that's it. Once we finish reviewing all of the data for all discretionary programs, we'll then compile it into reports and send that back on to OVW. How to go about approaching the reporting process. Now, as I just said, once you are awarded a grant from OVW, you must report every 6 months on the grant funded activities. Now, you also have to report even if you have not begun to draw down funds. So if you have not yet began using grant funds for activities, you will still go to our website, download the form, and you will fill out only the mandatory sections. You'll know that they are mandatory sections because at the top of the form, the different sections will say, all grantees must complete this section, or it'll ask you if you use grant funds for the activity it is asking about. If you did not use grant funds, you will simply answer no to all of those questions where it's asking if you use grant funds. And you will provide information on all of the mandatory sections. You will then still validate the form and submit it into JustGrants. Now, once you begin using grant funds, you will, of course, report on those mandatory sections, but then you will also report data in the sections that are related to the grant-funded activities that you did during the current reporting period.
Thank you, Hannah. And I will acknowledge that I have seen a couple questions come in that we will answer, but one that I want to answer right away because it's related to what Hannah was just describing is a question from Lynn Marie, which asks, are semi-annual program reports due this month, January to June 2021, due July 30th, 2021, supposed to be submitted via JustGrants? And the answer to that question is yes. Those semi-annual progress reports that you are currently filling out should be submitted via JustGrants. And so I did share the JustGrants contact information in the chat, and it is also among the slides. So if you have downloaded today's PowerPoint, it is in there as well as in the chat. And if you're having issues accessing JustGrants or submitting your progress report into JustGrants with the actual submission part, not the form part, then we recommend you reach out to JustGrants. Another thing I'll say, or another question we got that I'll respond to is Lindsay asked, commented, I am in JustGrants and don't see a PDF. And so you can get the PDF from our website, VAWAMEI.org, for your particular grant program. And Hannah just put the link to VAWAMEI.org into the chat. And also, you should have received one from your program specialist. But if you did not, don't worry about that. You can definitely download it from our website. And that link is now in the chat. And we got one more question. Oh. Okay, sorry about that. We got another question about if we are not using grant funds, we had to report it if it is a meeting requirement. And this is speaking to what Hannah just presented on about the minimum required sections of the progress report to fill out. And I am just going to restate exactly what she said, which is that if you are filling out your progress report, you should only report mandatory sections on the form. And so there is a universal rule that you should only fill out what is required, and you should only be entering data relevant to activities that were grant funded. And there is one exception to that on the campus program. So if you have a campus grant there are going to be questions that ask specifically about non-grant funded activities, but only in a section that is marked mandatory and universally true. You should only be filling out activities once your budget has been approved by OVW. And typically at that point, you do start using grant funds to conduct activities. I see that this person who is asking about that does have a campus grant, and I do not want to get into the details of how to fill out campus. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat right now. Anyone with a campus grant who wants to follow up about that eccentricity of the campus form, please send me an email and I will be happy to give you some one-on-one TA about that. Okay, thank you for the great questions. Feel free to keep them up. And I know we have gotten some that we have not answered yet, and that is because we are going to hold them for the end. And I just see that the screen sharing disappeared. So I will start my own screen share, because I suspect that means that Hannah's internet has cut out. So we were just on your data matters. Oh, I see it's back. Okay, your data matters. So why does submitting this progress report matter at all? Other than, of course, that it's federally required for your funding. Your progress report and the data that you report within that about what is done with grant funds is your opportunity to directly communicate to OVW about the work you do. It is unique in that your program specialist will look at the entire progress reporting form and read everything you write in the narrative boxes. So anything that you share there will be directly conveyed to your program specialist at OVW. It's your opportunity to talk about the successes that you've had and the challenges that you've faced in your community, carrying out your grant goals and objectives and trying to serve your community. It's your opportunity to really shed light on the scope of domestic and sexual violence around the country, including trends, promising practices, and areas of need. It's an opportunity to humanize the data and put stories alongside your concrete numbers to show in multiple ways the scope of what you're able to accomplish with this OVW funding. And finally, OVW uses grantee data to inform their requests for appropriations from Congress, as well as to defend VAWA funding to decision makers within the Department of Justice and within Congress and the federal administration. OVW relies on your data quite a bit when they are explaining the work done with VAWA funds to the rest of the decision makers in the federal government. And in fact, they've put together an semi-annual Attorney General report to Congress on the overall effectiveness of the VAWA funding. And that report is made up of data from you and every other VAWA grantee. So, data provides answers to a variety of questions, such as these. These are all examples of questions OVW has used your grant data to answer. Each of these is a question that someone has brought to OVW wondering how many law enforcement officers are funded through OVW grants, or what has the impact of changes to the LAB program been on types of services provided and the volume of services. These are word for word questions that have come to OVW that they've turned to all of your data to answer. We do turn over the numbers, but oftentimes it is the narrative and storytelling that really helps OVW and other decision makers understand and frame the problem and explain what solutions are out there in communities such as yours, because they have no other way to know. You're really the primary way they learn. that brings us to tips for successful data reporting. And I am wondering if Hannah is here.
I'm here, Devin.
Great. I'll pass it back to you then. Thank you.
Thank you. I was seeing some questions, but I'll focus for now. Some tips for successful data reporting. So across the board for all discretionary programs, our number one recommendation is that you only report on OVW funded activities and staff. Can you all hear me still? I cannot see people anymore. I am frozen. Okay, great. Thank you so much. So yeah, please only report on what your OVW grant funded during the current reporting period. And then use the narrative questions to discuss successes, provide more detail about what you reported in the numeric boxes, and or explain the data, provide context to the data. The narrative questions are a very helpful resource to not only us at VAWA MEI, but they're a great resource for your program specialist. And like Devin was just saying about the how the data is used, the narrative data is used quite a bit. It's used for reports, it's used for special requests, and it is used when we review the data. So the time and energy you put into the narrative questions and your responses does not go to waste. And our last tip for successful data reporting is to access our resources and recordings, one-on-one technical assistance that we are happy to provide via a phone call, email, or Zoom, and many of the other tools we have available on our website we recommend you access. This is some general reporting guidance focused on the pandemic. OVW and us recognize that it's possible that you're unable or were unable to collect data for the report. And if that is the case, do not estimate data for the report. Any numbers that are reported in the progress reporting forms should have adequate source documentation. And if you are unable to provide certain data that is required in the report or that you typically should be able to provide, use the narrative to discuss the impact of COVID-19 and why you were unable to provide the data. You would then include words like COVID-19 or pandemic in the narrative so that we can identify the instances where the pandemic has impacted your data collection efforts and reporting efforts.
Thank you, Hannah. That brings us to some COVID-specific guidance, or some more COVID-specific guidance, I should say. One thing to note that's very important is please do not use a future period's progress report to report activities that took place in the window from January to June 2021. Each reporting period should only include data from the period of time that that particular progress reporting form covers. Very important because it confuses data tracked both for us as well as for OVW. So if you have data that becomes available after you have submitted your progress report for the period in which that data occurred, you should contact your OVW program specialist, and they will walk you through what they would like you to do with that question, with that data, excuse me. Another thing is that we currently hear as an issue is that a progress report will give a warning that a data field needs data in it, but you actually don't have any data for that question. That question should remain blank to be in line with what was done with your funding. In this case, enter a 1 in any field that is prompting you for data, but for which you don't have data. Then use the final question on the entire form, which asks about any additional information about the data you submitted. And there, explain that you entered a 1 in the question that you entered it in order to validate the form, but that the number should be deleted. And you can use this tactic of writing a note directly to us at VAWA MEI anywhere you submit data that you think needs to be changed for some reason, such as this, when data needs to be deleted, or any data that you think we will have questions about. And perhaps you want to explain to us why the data looks a certain way. Here are a variety of resources that are ready and waiting to help you navigate this unique situation of filling out your progress reporting form under a variety of COVID-19 circumstances that might be quite different from the circumstances in which you previously were tracking and reporting data. So first off, the Office on Violence Against Women has published guidance very specific to COVID-19 and reporting during COVID-19. So that first link on this slide is an FAQs from OVW. The second link is information from Futures Without Violence, and that is a resource list with a variety of resources on it, and I believe that they are continually updating. So if you have a question or you're looking for assistance with something and you know it's not a question for us at VAWA MEI, we recommend you check out their resource list. And then finally, TA to TA has a COVID-19 resource hub, which is similarly a list of a variety of different types of resources and information related to COVID-19 and how to do the work of completing a OVW grant under these unique circumstances. We have some more resources that Hannah will walk us through, and I will go back to answering the questions that I can in the chat. But if we haven't gotten to yours, do not fear, we will get to the questions.
Thank you, Devin. I see that there are a couple questions about accessing the reporting forms, and I will go and show how to access the forms on our website in a moment. On the slide right now is a few more COVID-19 resources available on our website. The first one are a couple links for COVID-19 frequently asked questions, as well as a contact us form. And so the contact us form is a place where you can enter questions or request technical assistance from us, as opposed to emailing or calling directly. It's another avenue. The second bullet is a reporting in a pandemic office hours recording. And that is a recording of a webinar that we hosted with OVW last year about reporting during a pandemic. And the third resource is Crafting Narratives webinar, video and narrative examples, which is also available on our website. these recordings have a transcript available, as well as minute markers so that you can access certain sections or certain parts of the recording if
Hannah, you are muted again, unintentionally, I believe.
Thank you. I'm sorry. My internet has decided that between 2 and 3 p.m. today is when it wants to be troublesome. What was the last thing that was heard?
To be honest, I was answering questions and not listening very closely to where you were. I believe that you had spoken about the reporting in a pandemic office hours. And so I think you were on crafting narrative.
Oh, thank you so much, all of you lovely participants. Yes, there are minute markers for the recordings, so you can go to specific spots in the webinars and as well as the transcripts so that it's easier to access the information you're looking for. That's available for, I believe, all of our recordings on our website. The last link is a document that contains example grantee narratives if you're hoping for some concrete examples to learn how to craft narratives. Okay, and I'm wondering, Julia, if it works for you, I can attempt to screen share unless you want. Okay. Thank you. And I'm going to jump us to, oh, I'm currently unable to screen share.
I can screen share our website then. That was where you were going, right?
Yes.
Or at least I
Thank you.
should be able to. Let's see if I can. Yes. Okay. Is everyone seeing the website now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. So I should zoom out though. I don't know why it looks so large. So this is our website, wawamei.org, and this is where you can find your progress reporting form for any program that you are a part of. So you can do that by going to Grant Program, and then from here, choosing your program. So I know I saw in the chat, someone asked if there was a technical assistance form. So I will navigate us there so I can show that person where that one is, but they're all set up exactly the same. So if you choose your program, this navigation will work regardless of which program it is. So you scroll down, so it brings you right here, overview, scroll down, and it is the very first box available on the screen. It says technical assistance reporting form. You click it, it brings you to this page, and you can click this view form PDF. Now, you actually want to download it ultimately for you to fill it out rather than simply viewing it. But I guess my settings, because I know I always want to download it, it automatically downloaded it. Depending on what your browser settings are, you may or may not be able to just click this button and have it automatically download. But if it does open for you, you should very easily be able to download it if you choose that. And there are instructions right here on the page that walk you through exactly how you can be sure that you have the progress reporting form downloaded save to your desktop, and then open in Adobe, because that is where you want to fill it out before you try to submit it into JustGrants. Because if it's not open in Adobe, not all the fields will work and your data will not save. So it's very important that you make sure that your form is open in Adobe before you start filling it out. So that's where you can find the forms. They're each under the relevant program. So you pick your program, scroll down, and right here, the culturally specific services reporting form. Other resources here, the webinars that Hannah mentioned, you can click the webinars tab at the top and it will bring you here, and you can view or register for various webinars. So this is today's, this is tomorrow's, the webinar on victim services. And I know we have quite a few questions outstanding. So maybe now this would be a good time to try to catch up with those questions. And I'm not sure where to start. Hannah, have you been more focused on catching up with the chat questions or with the Q&A questions, and we can divide and conquer?
I have been focused on the Q&A.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I am currently in the chat, and I will stop sharing. And I'm going to scroll up and try to find the first next question that we have not yet answered. So someone asked, is the annual report the same as the semi-annual report, or is a different one to be used? That is a great question. So if you have a discretionary grant, you will be filling out a semi-annual report every 6 months for the whole lifetime of your grant, from as soon as you are awarded the grant to when you close the grant out. If you are a formula subgrantee, that is a STOP subgrantee or a FAQs subgrantee, you will have an annual progress reporting form to fill out. And that is the, it is also located on our website under the SAS program or the STOP program. And you should also be able to get that from your formula administrator. But now that I'm rereading this question, I'm thinking maybe you actually mean the report that is published. And so I will, which features data from all grantees. So I will actually screen share again. Apologies if that was your question and I completely misconstrued it at first. So if you click on the reports tab, you can see there's excerpts from the most recently published report, which is the 2018 report to Congress. And there is only one report and it is published every other year. And so if I called it an annual report earlier, which I very well might have done, I apologize for that misspeaking. It is a semi-annual report. That is, or excuse me, it's actually a biennial report published every other year, which is different from the semi-annual progress reporting forms, which are the forms that all grantees submit, and they're submitted every 6 months if you are a discretionary grantee.
I see there is a question about expiration dates on the forms, and you should be using the form you downloaded from our website, and you do not need to worry about the expiration date up in the upper right-hand corner. If you downloaded the form from our website, that is the form you need to use.
Awesome, thank you, Hannah. And I'm scrolling through the chat, and I think we actually caught all of the questions that made their way into the chat, except one question that if you would like to submit earlier, close out, and want to mark the current semi-annual report as final report, would form allow for that? And that depends. You have to submit one semi-annual report for every reporting period in which you have a grant. So even if you have spent down the money, but your grant term is not over, the answer is no. You would still have to fill out another progress reporting form, even if you are no longer spending grant money, to reflect the full term of your progress report. But that might be something that can be adjusted if you speak with your program specialist. The rule in general is that if you have a grant at the given time, you have to submit a progress report reflecting that period. So for example, if you have a grant that ends in September of 2021, you still need to submit a report that covers the July 1st to December 31st, 2021 period. And I see we just got another question, and I believe this question is from the transitional housing program. Is that true? The question is, great, thank you for that follow-up confirmation. This is a transitional housing question. So do we consider that a participant is exiting when the rental assistance ends? And the question is yes. The person being served is considered exiting the transitional housing program as soon as the program stops using grant funds to pay for the housing costs. And the additional services are separate and not considered part of the housing services, like the being housed within the program. Great, I'm glad that answered your question. Thank you. And I will also add another colleague of ours email address into the chat for anyone who is part of the transitional housing program and might have very specific questions. There is a whole separate webinar on that topic, but in addition, I just put expert on the transitional housing program into the chat, so you can email her any further questions that you might have. Okay, how are we doing with Q&A questions? I'm going to mute myself and look at the Q&A questions. Thank you everyone for so graciously bearing with us. This is a new format to Hannah and I hope pretty sure that we will be able to get to all of your questions, but thank you for being so patient and for being persistent in asking them.
Thank you. Julia, our colleague, also put in the chat box a link for the registration for the transitional housing webinar that we will be hosting, I think, in a week or two. It will be our colleague Casey Benner and I. There are a couple questions in the Q&A box, and I'm wondering if I will continue to respond to them. But Devin, there is one attendee that was hoping to have a screen share demonstrating how to download the report and make sure that it's open in Adobe.
I can definitely do that. Thank you, Hannah, for directing me to that. Okay, and thanks for that great question, whoever asked that. I'm sure that will be very useful to many people. So I'm going to bring our website back up and screen share again. Okay, so here is our website, and I'm going to use I'm going to use the Improving Criminal Justice Response Program this time as my example. So I chose the program, and now I'm going to scroll down on the page that it brings me to the part where it says Improving Criminal Justice Response Reporting Form. I'm going to click that. And so, like I mentioned before, if you click View Form, it might take you to a preview, or it might just begin downloading it. It depends on your internet browser and how you have it configured. So it's currently downloading for me. And now on my computer, because I use the Firefox browser, the download is waiting right here with this arrow. So I'm going to click that arrow, and I'm going to choose the form I just downloaded and open it. Oh, actually, I'll do this a different way. I take that back, because this is performing based on my own settings, and so it's not going to be. Okay, I'll do this all over again. So instead of opening it, I am going to save this to my desktop. So how am I going to do that without opening it? I am going to drag it to my desktop. So I'll make this smaller. And so click and drag from your downloads to your desktop. And, oh, I didn't close it. My bad. Sorry, all. I've never tried to demo this before. I've walked people through doing it on their computer, but using Zoom versus the phone is somewhat new to me. How do I? Can't grab it. Okay, I'm going to stop share for a second. Close that. Okay, let's try this again. So if I share my whole screen, there we go. And I open up this website again. I'm going to click and drag this to my desktop. And then I'm going to open Adobe Reader DC. And so if you don't have that, this is where you can download it. I'm going to put this into the chat, because what you want to do is make sure that you have the most recent version, you have this particular version of Adobe Reader open. How do I get the chat back? There we go. That's where you download Adobe Reader DC. Now, since I already have this, I should just be able to open it. So after saving the form to your desktop, you open Adobe Reader DC, and then you choose the file that you want to open. In this case, your progress reporting form. Huh. That's weird. This list does not look. Okay, you can also go to your downloads. I don't know where ICJR went. I'm going to open the TA one that I downloaded earlier. So choose the form you want. And if you saved it to your desktop, it should show up in your files on your desktop. And then once you've chosen it and it opens in Adobe Reader, now you should have full functionality for the progress report. And you can move through and fill it out. You should be able to type into the award period up here, date, 2012. Oh, okay. Which, look, I made a rookie mistake. So one of the ways you can tell that the program progress reporting form is accurately open in Adobe is that it will give you warnings as you go through if you make any errors. So it's telling me I wrote the date in incorrectly. So I should write 07/05/21 and then proceed to answer the rest of the questions on the form. One thing that I'll also point out is it won't let you enter data in a, oh, well, it's letting me now. Never mind. Before you start filling out, oh, it's a different section, that's why. So it won't let me enter any data here under total number of FTEs until I click, yes, funds were used for staff, and then I can enter my numbers there. So I'm sorry that that tutorial was somewhat sloppy, but the general idea is that you go to the website, you download the form, you open Adobe, and then you open the form. And then you should be able to fill it out, no problem. It's also something that we're happy to walk grantees through over the phone as often as needed, because the technology is always changing, and it's something that we know can be very tricky. So I will put my own email back into the chat. Someone asks, is this a new form? It is not a new technical assistance form. There should be no brand new form this reporting period. All forms should be the same as the one that you just submitted for the July to December 2020 reporting period. Someone else asks, can you edit a form after it's been validated? And the answer is yes. Up until when you submit the form in JustGrants, you can change any of the data that you have entered onto the form. Okay.
If you,
So,
I was just going to say that if you do edit the form after it's been validated, just make sure to validate it again so that it is completely validated when you upload it into JustGrants.
okay, I'm reading through. Oh, go on, Hannah.
I just wanted to note that there was a question about the browser that you're using when downloading the form. And in theory, you should be able to use any browser to download the form. We have received some feedback from a grantee that Chrome or Firefox seem to work better than Internet Explorer or Edge. So that's something to consider when trying to download. But if you run into any issues with downloading the form or getting it to open in Adobe, please reach out to us. And we're happy to Zoom call or jump on a phone call to troubleshoot.
Thank you, Hannah. And I'm going to reshare the last slide for the last couple minutes we have here, but Hannah and I will be here right up to the 3 o'clock mark. So feel free to ask any more questions that you might have. I think, okay, sorry about that. Why did it do that? Okay. Great. Sorry about that. Having screen sharing technical difficulties but I got it straightened out. So here are Hannah and my emails, as well as the VAWA MEI general contact line. And, oh, no, what just happened? I'm sorry, all. Okay, I guess I cannot actually screen share and also look at the chat at all, which I did not realize. My apologies. So if you have another question, we've got just a couple minutes left. Thank you everyone for dealing with us. Yes, I see someone acknowledged the technical gremlins. Yeah, they abound. It's definitely not just you. Thank you very much for bearing with us, and thank you everyone for your patience. If anyone has a question we did not get to or that we did not answer to your satisfaction, please don't hesitate to send Hannah or I an email. We will get back to you as soon as we can, and if we don't have an answer, we will be able to connect you to someone or a resource who will have an answer. And thank you again to TA for setting up the interpreters and translators and for hosting this. And one tip I'll share, Jose Juan said that it really helps to save your responses in a Word doc, just in case the form does not save the narrative pieces. It's one thing that if you can avoid learning it the hard way, it's worth hearing a tip from someone who has been through it many times. So there's our advice to you. Thank you very much for being here. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with a question.